In 1986, millions of Americans sat in front of their televisions watching a dramatic live broadcast hosted by Geraldo Rivera. The world believed they were about to witness the discovery of hidden treasure belonging to the most notorious gangster in American history, Al Capone. The cameras rolled. Workers smashed open the hidden vault beneath the historic Lexington Hotel in Chicago. Dust filled the air as the final wall came down. Inside the vault, there was nothing. Just dirt, broken bottles, and disappointment. For decades, that moment convinced the world.
All right, clear the
that
area. Let's get this thing out. Copy that. Moving back now. Watch the swing. Keep clear.
Was far more complicated. What if the millions never disappeared at all, but were hidden in places no one ever thought to look? The famous 1986 broadcast became one of the most memorable television events in American crime history. Viewers expected stacks of cash, gold bars, or secret documents. Instead, the empty vault created a myth that the rumors of Capone's hidden fortune were simply exaggerated stories. But historians and investigators later pointed out something important. Al Capone was not careless. He was a master of deception. During the era of Prohibition in the United States between 1920 and 1933, his empire generated enormous wealth through illegal alcohol distribution, gambling operations, and protection rackets. Estimates suggest Capone earned more than $100 million a year during the 1920s, which would equal billions of dollars today. And yet, when the government finally brought him down in 1931, most of that money was never recovered. So investigators began asking a new question. What if Capone never stored his fortune in obvious safes or hotel basements? What if the real vaults were hidden somewhere far more permanent, inside the city itself? Modern researchers studying Chicago's underground infrastructure have uncovered strange architectural clues beneath the city streets. Beneath parts of Chicago's South Side lies a maze of forgotten tunnels, sealed corridors, and reinforced chambers built during the early 20th century. Some were originally created for freight systems and underground transit. Others were quietly sealed during the late Prohibition era. Using modern ground-penetrating radar, urban historians have identified unusual concrete structures that do not appear in official building records. Some of these structures are located near businesses historically linked to Capone's organization, including warehouses, laundries, and transportation hubs. These sealed areas are particularly interesting because they were filled with industrial-grade concrete far stronger than what was typically used for infrastructure projects during that time. Why seal empty tunnels so permanently? Unless they were never empty in the first place. The real genius of Capone's operation wasn't just bootlegging. It was money laundering. Illegal alcohol profits were constantly moved through legitimate businesses. Laundries, hotels, restaurants, and real estate investments helped transform illegal cash into respectable assets. Investigators now believe that much of Capone's fortune may have been converted into early property ownership across Chicago and surrounding areas. Some of these properties were placed into land trusts, a legal structure that hides the identity of the true owner. A number of those trusts still exist today. Financial experts studying historical records say that Capone's wealth may have quietly evolved into modern commercial assets worth billions of dollars. In other words, the fortune was never truly lost. It was simply hidden inside the system. In 2025, infrastructure workers performing upgrades in the suburb of Cicero, Illinois reportedly uncovered sealed chambers beneath an old industrial block. Cicero was once a major stronghold of Capone's criminal network. While officials described the chambers as old storage spaces, historians immediately noticed similarities between the construction and the reinforced structures found in other suspected Capone locations. Heavy steel reinforcement, thick concrete walls, and unusual placement beneath businesses historically connected to Prohibition-era bootlegging routes. No treasure was publicly reported. But the discovery revived a century-old mystery. Because if even one of these sealed vaults still contains records, gold, or hidden currency, it could rewrite the financial history of organized crime in America. Today, the skyline of Chicago towers above millions of residents who walk its streets every day. Office buildings, parking structures, warehouses, apartment blocks. But beneath some of those foundations may lie hidden chambers that were never meant to be opened. silent vault sealed during the most dangerous era of organized crime. If the evidence is correct, Capone's fortune was never buried in a single safe. Instead, it was distributed, disguised, and integrated into the very foundations of the city. Which means the lost Prohibition millions might still exist today, not as stacks of hidden cash, but as the invisible financial skeletons supporting parts of modern Chicago itself. And somewhere beneath the concrete maze of the city, there may still be a vault that has never been opened. For nearly a century, the mystery of Al Capone's missing fortune refused to disappear. Historians, journalists, and investigators had searched for it in bank records, hidden safes, and abandoned warehouses. Some believed the money had been seized quietly by the government. Others believed it had been spent long ago by members of the Chicago outfit. But there was always another possibility. What if the money was never meant to be found? What if Capone had hidden it in a way that allowed it to keep growing quietly for generations? To understand that idea, investigators began looking deeper into how Capone's empire actually worked during the years of Prohibition. During the 1920s, alcohol was illegal across the United States, but demand for it never stopped. In fact, the ban created one of the most profitable black markets in American history. Al Capone quickly became one of the most powerful figures in that underground economy. From breweries and hidden distilleries to trucking routes and speakeasy bars, Capone's organization controlled a massive network of illegal alcohol distribution throughout Chicago. Money poured in every day. Bootlegging alone brought in enormous profits, but that was only one part of the operation. Capone's organization also earned money through gambling houses, nightclubs, protection payments, and other illegal businesses. Historians estimate that Capone's empire generated more than $100 million a year at its peak. In today's money, that would equal billions. Yet when federal authorities finally arrested Capone in 1931 for tax evasion, investigators were surprised by something strange. They could not find most of the money. There were no massive bank accounts connected directly to Capone. No giant treasure vaults filled with cash. No records explaining where the wealth had gone. It simply seemed to disappear. For decades, people believed the fortune had been lost forever. But modern financial researchers began asking a new question. What if the money had never disappeared at all? What if it had simply changed form? During the Prohibition era, Capone understood something many criminals did not. Stolen money was dangerous to keep in cash. It could be seized, stolen, or traced by investigators. But property was different. Land, buildings, businesses. These things could hold value for decades without attracting attention. So Capone and his associates began investing their money quietly. Small laundries appeared across Chicago neighborhoods. Restaurants opened under different ownership names. Warehouses were purchased near rail lines and shipping routes. At first glance, these businesses looked ordinary, but they served an important purpose. They allowed illegal money to move through legal businesses, slowly becoming part of the normal economy. Investigators later called this process washing the money. A speakeasy might report normal restaurant income. A laundry service might claim steady customer payments. A trucking company could record transportation fees. Each business looked harmless, but together they created a system that could move huge amounts of money without raising suspicion. Over time, that money could be used to purchase land and buildings across the city. By the time Capone was sent to prison, many of these investments had already been transferred into legal structures called land trusts. Land trusts were extremely useful. They allowed property ownership to remain hidden behind layers of legal paperwork. The public records might show the name of a trust, but not the person who truly controlled it. In many cases, these trusts could exist for generations. That meant property bought in the 1920s could still be connected to the same hidden ownership today. Financial historians studying Chicago property records noticed something unusual. Some land trusts created during the Prohibition era had never been dissolved. They still existed. The buildings connected to them had changed over the decades. Businesses had opened and closed. Neighborhoods had grown and modernized. But the legal ownership structures had remained quietly intact. This discovery raised an important possibility. Capone's fortune may not have been buried underground at all. Instead, it may have been transformed into a network of hidden real estate investments spread throughout the city. In other words, the money was still there. It had simply become part of Chicago itself. Researchers began comparing historical maps of Chicago from the 1920s with modern property records. Certain neighborhoods showed strange patterns. Blocks of property owned by the same anonymous trusts. Warehouses located near old rail routes once used by bootleggers. Buildings constructed above older sealed tunnel systems. Some investigators believe these locations might have served another purpose during Prohibition. Secret storage. Hidden transport corridors. Private vault spaces. Because during the early 20th century, Chicago had a large underground infrastructure network. Freight tunnels ran beneath the downtown streets. Utility corridors connected different buildings. Service passages allowed goods to move through the city without appearing on crowded roads above. Many of these tunnels were later sealed or abandoned, but records of their exact locations were incomplete. That meant some sections of the underground system could remain hidden even today. In recent years, new technology has allowed researchers to study what lies beneath modern city streets. Ground-penetrating radar can reveal hollow spaces buried under layers of soil and concrete. Urban historians using this technology in parts of Chicago discovered several unexplained underground chambers. These chambers were not part of modern infrastructure. They were older, and in some cases, they appeared to be reinforced with thick concrete walls and steel supports. Structures like that are not normally built without a purpose. Particularly during the Prohibition era, when criminal organizations often needed hidden storage areas for alcohol shipments, cash reserves, and sensitive records. The discovery of these underground spaces did not prove they belonged to Capone's organization. But the locations raised questions. Several of the chambers were found near neighborhoods historically connected to Capone's operations. One of the most interesting areas was the suburb of Cicero. During the 1920s, Cicero was one of Capone's strongest territories. Many of his operations were based there, including breweries, gambling houses, and political offices controlled by his allies. In 2025, construction workers performing infrastructure upgrades in Cicero made an unusual discovery while digging beneath an old industrial block. They uncovered a sealed chamber made from extremely thick concrete. The walls were reinforced with steel bars. The entrance had been completely filled and hidden behind layers of newer construction. When the chamber was opened, workers found an empty space inside. No gold, no stacks of money, no hidden treasure. But the structure itself was unusual enough to attract attention from historians studying Capone's network. Why build such a secure underground room? And why seal it so completely that no one discovered it for nearly 100 years? Some experts believe the chamber may have once served as a temporary storage site for bootlegging profits. Others think it may have held important records or documents that were later removed. But there is another possibility. That chamber may have been only one part of a much larger underground system. Because if Capone's organization built vaults or storage chambers beneath Chicago during Prohibition, there could be many more still hidden beneath the modern city. Over the decades, buildings have been demolished and rebuilt. Streets have been widened. Entire neighborhoods have changed. But underground structures often remain long after the world above them is transformed. Which means parts of Capone's hidden infrastructure could still exist today. Quiet, sealed, forgotten beneath layers of concrete and steel. Every day, thousands of people walk through the streets of Chicago without realizing what might lie beneath their feet. Hidden tunnels, sealed vaults, and perhaps the last remaining clues to one of the greatest financial mysteries in American crime history. Because if even one of those hidden chambers still contains documents, records, or stored wealth, it could finally answer a question that has puzzled historians for nearly a century. What really happened to the millions of dollars that flowed through Al Capone's empire during Prohibition? And somewhere beneath the busy streets of Chicago, there may still be a vault waiting to be opened.